My brother is having a mental health crisis and is receiving treatment from the VA. What can I do about his gun collection? So I get a lot of questions throughout the week, whether it's my role with San Diego County Gun Owners or Gun Owners Radio or, whatever, but I get a lot of questions on various things. And this week's question was particularly involved. So I wanted to bring it up, and hopefully I think this will be helpful to a lot of people. It'll remain out there as a resource that people may need in the future. My brother is having a mental health crisis and is receiving treatment from the VA. What can I do about his gun collection? Now, I don't think it particularly matters what kind of mental health crisis he's having. Mm-hmm. If this person is concerned, then I think that's enough. It doesn't particularly matter. Maybe it matters a little bit whether or not he decided to get help or if help was forced on him, but we'll talk a little bit about that more later. I'm going to try to stay very general so it doesn't just apply to this one situation, but it gives people ideas and suggestions for multiple situations. My suggestion to her was, first I asked, do you have access to his home? And she did. Well, if he trusts her enough to have access to the home, and it sounded like they were very close, I said the first thing you can do right away that would definitely help, and maybe it's not the entire solution, but I think the first step in this would be you can go to his house right now and take his magazines and his ammunition. Now, I think that I think some people might, put up their hand and say, wait a minute, wouldn't that be an ammunition transfer? And that's, you have to go through a background check with an FFL and there's I agree that is a huge problem with the ammunition background check that has been forced on us in California. I also think that the risk of being convicted for that is minimal compared to the good it could possibly do. If he's really truly having a mental health crisis that is something that he's getting ongoing care for, that he's actually been put into a facility or has decided to check into a facility and she's that worried about it, I think a quick, easy first step is grab the magazines, grab the ammo, and let's at least make sure, he doesn't have access to that. From there, my suggestion was, if he agrees, which it sounds like he would be agreeable to this, and it sounds like he did trust his sister enough, the next step is do a private party transfer of all the firearms to the sister, have her store it until things change, or maybe they never change. But at least get those firearms out of his legal and physical possession. And the only real way to do that would be to go through an FFL. She can't borrow those firearms thanks to California's laws, which that's preventing her from helping her brother, who's going through a mental health crisis. So that's another gun law other than the ammo background check law that is preventing her from helping. But go to an FFL, do the transfer in the proper legal way, and relieve him of the possession of those firearms, at least temporarily, maybe permanently. And then the third thing I said that was basically the most extreme, if he doesn't agree to give up the firearms and there still is a major concern and there is a track record of mental health issues, then, as much as we oppose gun violence restraining orders when it comes to using them as standard operating procedure for law enforcement, this was actually kind of what gun violence restraining orders were created to do. When somebody doesn't quite have a clear option, but there is a very obvious mental health issue, and it was a little foggy as to, hey, how can we make sure that this person who appears to be a threat to themselves and others, how do we make sure that they don't have the means to do that? They don't have firearms. They were a responsible firearm owner, and now things have changed. So in the most extreme situation, if he doesn't agree to give up his firearms and he is truly going through a mental health crisis, then there is still the option of a gun violence restraining order, which I know a lot of people are probably surprised to hear me suggest that to someone, or surprised to hear me say that is even an option. But the reality is this is a very different situation. What we oppose to is the abuse of gun violence restraining orders and using gun violence restraining orders, predatorily. In this situation, it's a possible option depending on just how serious his mental health is, but it sounds like it was pretty serious. So those are the 3 suggestions I made in that situation. Not necessarily what everybody would suggest and not the only suggestions out there. So I wanted to open it up. What do you guys think?
So first of all, I want to start off with, I am not a lawyer and I cannot give legal advice. I'm not a mental health professional. I cannot advise there either. However, the one thing that and I agree with everything that you stated. And as far as the point you mentioned about the whole thing with ammo and transfer, in any aspect of the legality of this, I think you have to really weigh the cost and the benefit.
Yeah.
Right? Is there a legal risk and a liability on her end? Yes. But sometimes you got to look at, am I willing to go into that realm? Am I willing to do that? Is the benefit can be great enough to where I'm willing to risk that? And and this is a circumstance to where I agree that I personally would as well.
Well, and California has these asinine laws that none of us agree with, right? Like if you're listening to this from any other state, most likely in your state that wouldn't even be a problem, right? Most states you could just grab the ammo. In a lot of states you could just grab the guns and borrow them, right? Like there's all sorts of different states with different laws. But in California, not only do you need the background check, but you also need a firearm registered to your home in order to purchase ammunition. So it's, that's a little bit of a complication there too. But again, like Alicia was saying, what is the thing that we're possibly saving here? We could be saving lives. Is that worth maybe a little bit of legal trouble? For me, if it was my brother, it would be. But for some of you, your brothers, maybe it's not, right? So this is very, very personal, and I don't want anybody to take any of this advice as like we're telling you how to handle these situations. But these are just some options out there for you guys.
Well, yeah, what are some additional options that I didn't think of?
My first thought was separating the upper and the lower, especially if it's like regular handguns, like Glocks and things like that. The slide is not an FFL item.
Great
so
suggestion.
I could take the slide off of all the handguns, take the slides with me. That gun can't work, but only the lower is an actual gun, and that lower can stay in his possession. And he can't do anything with it unless he buys a slide, right? So that's one thing that I was thinking would be a pretty simple and quick fix. The other one is if he has a big safe in his house, lock all the guns up and take the key, right? Get them locked up. They're still in his home, but at least it's I can do this right this second. I can drive to his house. I can lock his guns up. I can take the key with me, or I can hide the key or whatever. Those were kind of the first, like, right now, I don't have time to go to an FFL. I don't have time to go hunt through his whole house to find all the ammo. Like, what can I do that's pretty quick and simple? The more like long-term things, and I just want to clarify because we mentioned earlier about the mental health piece of this, is that there are all sorts of legal steps that you can go through your local sheriff's department or police department if it is an actual 5150 hold, or if somebody's being committed to a mental health facility. That is allowing the police to do a temporary seizure of the firearms, even outside of the gun violence restraining order piece. So already federally, it's illegal for people who are found, mentally incompetent or who are detained or committed involuntarily to possess guns. So you can always call your local police department or sheriff's office and discuss it with them and explain the situation, even if you don't want to take the step of going all the way to a GVRO. Yeah. So there's some kind of middle ground options there too.
What other, Alicia, do you have any suggestions that I didn't think of or Dakota didn't think of?
No, the one that I had in my mind as well was the taking of the slide. Same thing, because the downside to the whole FFL thing that, as you mentioned, is going to the FFL, the brother would have to be on board with that because present. He would have to go present, he would have to sign. If he's not available, if he is maybe willing to let something happen for safety but just not willing to participate, the FFL is not an option.
Right.
So the taking of the slide was going to be where I was going to go as well.
Good.
Yeah, and I will say, like, if you're in this situation, you can always call and let your local sheriff's department or police department know that you did that. You could let them know, hey, I separated the uppers and lowers, and I took all of the uppers, and I have them in my possession. And then that way, if he calls and says, my sister stole half of my guns, now at least there's a record of that this was for his benefit, that you were trying to do the right thing, not that you were committing a property theft or crime.
There's a tough situation all around, and I didn't have all the. It's impossible to have all the details to know exactly what to do. But we wanted to give some suggestions in case you're in a similar situation or you know somebody that's in a similar situation. There are obviously other ways to do the same thing that we didn't mention, but these are some of the suggestions we came up with. I know people are extremely worried about escalating an already bad situation. And I get that. California has turned into, its legal system has turned so predatory against gun owners that it's replacing pragmatism with fear. And I get that. It really, truly is extremely difficult to be a gun owner in California, and they're making it tougher on gun owners, and it's not really affecting criminals in any way. So,
one thing I'd like to add, absolutely 100% right. I was just thinking back to, I've been in a similar situation, and in my circumstance, taking of the slide was not done. However, what I did, and not everybody has this as an option, I removed firing pins.
Yeah.
Everything stayed on site, locked separately, firing pins in one place, slides in another, and then frames in yet another place. So everything stayed in location there. Just another option to throw out there.
Great. There you go.
Yeah, that's good. And because we're talking about mental health, I just want to mention, if you or someone you know is struggling with your mental health or thoughts of suicide or anything like that, please seek help. Do not let the fact that you own firearms stop you from getting the help that you need. You can call 988. That's the suicide prevention hotline, but there's lots and lots of local resources near you. A quick Google search will find those. But don't not get help just because you're afraid of the outcome on the firearm side of things. Definitely seek the help you need.
Walk the Talk America is a great resource for gun owners in particular.
Hey, thanks for watching Gun Owners Radio. I hope you loved that clip. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and follow us on social media, and check out our website at gunownersradio.com.